Welcome to the first ever episode of The Influence Gap. This episode explores the truth of the influencer economy and the hidden pay gap, as well as algorithmic biases. I'm your host, Tafara, and today I'm so excited to have Bree join me. Would you please like to just briefly introduce yourself and what kind of work it is you do?
Yeah, sure. Yes, thank you for having me on here. I'm excited. But yeah, I'm Bree. I'm the founder of Purpose Brand Management, which is a creative agency. I work with influencers as a talent manager. I also do branding strategy and social media management. So that's kind of what we do.
Wow, so like, perfect person to talk about this with.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Um, So, unfortunately, despite having similar engagement statistics and rates, many Black influencers actually earn less than their white counterparts. And it can actually be up to 35% less sometimes, which is crazy. And on these social media platforms, algorithms tend to favor content more from non Black creators. So, let's go into why these disparities exist and what should be done about them.
Yeah, I think that's like there's multiple layers to this, unfortunately. I think the biggest thing right now is that this is such a new industry that there aren't really any type of regulations. Everyone thinks just because, it's saturated right now that this industry has been out for a long time. I mean, it's a new industry. Lawyers, doctors, engineers, all of those jobs and unions that have been formed. It's been decades of fighting for, equity and pay as well. And there are still some Black people, brown people in those industries who are getting paid, near where their white counterparts are. So I think number one, this is like just a major issue across all job types. But number two, I also think you have to also remember that these companies are purposely sending out NDAs with these contracts saying, okay, what we pay you, you don't talk about. And they're keeping it under wraps on purpose for this reason, because unfortunately, the white demographic is the target audience for most of these companies. So I think, once again, this is a multi-layered issue, but I think when you don't have, if your brand isn't trying to target Black or brown people, you really don't see a need from your lens on why I should pay them the same amount as I would pay someone who is white.
Have you ever directly, like immediately as soon as you start a brand deal or work, whether it's with yourself or any creators you may work with, have you instantly noticed the disparity? Like, that's not right.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so interesting to me because I typically do work with Black and brown creators, but at one point I worked on the brand side at a startup. And the numbers that I would see them send out for white creators is kind of what even got me wanting to do my own thing and only kind of help the Black and brown creators, because I saw, and I'm just going to give you an example one time we did a campaign where they used a white female and a Black male. And I think the campaign lasted for like a month. I want to say, let's say just 4 posts. The Black male, who had, I think, 1.5 or 1.6 million followers, got paid like $700 for 4 posts within a month, which, number one, that's insane. Somebody with 10,000 followers shouldn't even have taken that deal. But the white woman had like right under 100,000 followers and she got paid $30,000. So it's so crazy how different these numbers can be, and it can be within the same company. I think a lot of people think too, like, oh, maybe this company just doesn't have the budget to pay creators. That's typically not the case. They're just very selective about where they want to spend their dollars, which is why typically when I am working with my clients, whatever that first offer is, negotiate, because typically when you are Black and brown, they are going to lowball you. I have not seen in my 6-7 years in this industry an offer go to a Black creator, at least working under me or me on the corporate side, where I thought it was fair at the beginning. Like they've always either had to negotiate, or most Black and brown people just will choose to take it because then they feel like they're being like extra or difficult if they negotiate, which others have no problem doing that. So
Yeah, there's an Instagram account I found. It seems to be inactive now, but it was called Influencer Pay Gap. And people would send in anonymously, they would send in either brand deals that they've had and what they got paid, or what they thought that their rate should be, but then when they've compared it to other people, it's not the same. And it's very difficult because, like you mentioned before, brands will send you an NDA saying you don't talk about how much you get paid. This all needs to be very under
Yep.
wraps and everything. But realistically, they're saying that because they know that the next person is getting the proper amount. And
Right.
it's hard because it does contribute to the lack of pay transparency in influencer marketing. And it's very hard to know exactly how to value yourself and what your actual worth is. So I know you said you like to encourage your clients to always negotiate, but do you think it's hard to do so?
Oh, for sure. For sure. A lot of people, especially, the demographic we're speaking of, don't feel worthy of it. I think this is an industry where, okay, we're not saving lives. We're not doctors. We're not, ambulance men or firefighters. Why are we getting paid $30,000 for 2 posts? It sounds absurd, some of the numbers that we hear about. And I think a lot of people, especially within our community, we just feel unworthy of it. Like, okay, I don't think I can ask for this much. I don't want to. And I think that also goes back to, which I'm assuming we'll get into a little bit, just the knowledge gap as well. There's not enough like education about it. There's not enough people actually talking about this, and like what you should be getting paid and what you shouldn't be. Because when most people transition into being influencers, they typically have no knowledge of what this industry even looks like. So when you do have that knowledge gap, it's easier for you to get, abused by the system because of the lack of knowledge. So I think, the biggest thing is they just feel, that they're not worthy of the prices. And what I will say is everyone that I've worked with is so funny. So they'll come to me first and they're like, okay, here's what I've been getting paid, whatever, whatever. And I sit down and I run the calculations with them. I'll show them the number and they're like, no way. No way I should have been getting paid that. And I'm like, yes. And this is the starting point, mind you. So it's just I think it's a little bit of just that knowledge gap and then them not feeling worthy of the prices that they charge.
Yeah, it's crazy because even with a traditional job, ambulance, doctor, whatever, there's like minimum wages and certain like benchmarks that you have to meet in those industries. But with the influencer economy being so fresh and the lack of knowledge, the lack of education, there isn't necessarily a benchmark. So then so many people are not actually getting what they're meant to be getting. And it's sad. It is really sad.
It is. It is. And it's like there's no way, at least at this moment, to say, okay, here's what I should be getting paid for 10,000 followers as a Black woman or as a Black woman in fitness or as a Black woman, because there's so many different factors that go into it. The number of followers is like such a small part of the pie that it just makes it hard. Once again, in this instance where you have someone maybe with 10,000 followers and another person with 11,000, and there could be thousands of dollars in between that, what they get paid by the same brand simply based on other metrics. So I think that's what makes it hard as well.
And then on top of that, when you bring in algorithms and the biases of these algorithms as well, they definitely have a big role in perpetuating the disparities between Black and white influencers and makes it even harder for content visibility. So that also is a barrier to a good pay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I kind of want to talk about that a little bit in two different like sections. But first thing with algorithms is I think we also have to remember, and this is just someone being Black who has worked in marketing. Typically, when I've worked in startups or when I've worked amongst other people in this industry, there's always the one Black girl. There's always the one Black guy that works in these industries still. And I think we have to remember, like, if those are the people in charge of marketing, if the algorithm is written by 90% white men or 90% white women, whatever the statistic is, what does that mean for the algorithm? That automatically is going to tell us it's not going to favor us or our content. And then one day, I think a story that kind of ties into this, I was working alongside a colleague. She was white. And I would just all the time be bringing up random influencers to her, and it would just be like a blank face. Like I would always know of the influencers that she spoke of, and she would bring to us like, oh, I think this would be a good person for X campaign. Yes, they were white, they'd be Latina maybe sometimes. I'm like, oh, I know of them. But when I share who I think would be a good fit, she's like, oh, I haven't heard of them. And I have never seen them. And to me, it's like, wow, this person has like 5 million followers. They're going crazy on TikTok, 3 million on Instagram, and you've never heard of them. But I think that side, and I talk about this a lot, I think that they have a side of TikTok and we have a side of TikTok. Same thing with Instagram. They have a side of Instagram and we have a side. And it's so hard when you are working in influencer marketing in a corporate setting as the one token Black girl that got hired, because now your opinions, or who do you want for this campaign, or what type of campaign should we run next month, it's you versus the 9 or the 10 other blonde girls, brunette girls in this role as well, trying to kind of feed off of each other with ideas. So I think people forget that as well. And I think, that kind of ties into what we see as far as influencer campaigns, how the algorithm is written, and, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I've personally noticed, aside from the differences in Black creators and white creators, how their content performs, also if a Black creator is just doing something like a makeup routine, that could be okay. But then if she's come on to maybe talk about something, or she's got like an intellectual point, there isn't much of a push for that. And it's like, are they not meant to make points? Are they not meant to have things to say? Should we just be quiet?
Yeah. I actually got there. So I think an interesting thing about my content is like a lot of people who are in the field that I do kind of, they talk about, here's what you can do if you want, to do this on Instagram, or you want to get in this field, the type of videos you should make. But I talk a lot about the disparity. And I did have a video where I spoke about how basically, there are white people or, other people, regular people who are getting hired for these roles. And when I kind of talked about it, they were like, well, if they're qualified, why does it matter? And a lot of people were in my comments that day kind of speaking about that, because sometimes my videos will hit our target audience, sometimes it won't. And it kind of fell into the hands of the other side where they're like, well, I feel like if they're qualified, I don't think it's necessary to have diversity amongst these roles. And I think with that mindset, and kind of, you're not in the United States, but I don't know if right now, DEI is being rolled back. So, that is a program for us to actually be in these spaces. And we were barely in these spaces to begin with. So it's hard to see those type of comments, especially when I speak about this online. And then they're like, I don't see a need for, diversity in the workplace. If people are qualified, they have their marketing degree, they have all these things. But then that makes us feel like, okay, are we not valuable enough to be marketed to? We're spending money on these products just like other people. So it's just really hard, I think, on the consumer side, and me working on the other side, to see like there's a huge gap in the space of like, we're spending our money the same way everyone else is, but why am I not your target audience as well? So
yeah. And you briefly just mentioned DEI, and sometimes even if the DEI isn't enough, when they try and do a campaign or do a brand with an influencer, it can feel very tokenistic. Like it's just to prove a point, be like, hey, here you go. Here's your Black influencer. Here's your creator. Have that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel authentic. And, I think what a lot of people right now are craving on social media is that. And we're seeing through, a lot of brands and campaigns, like, for example, there was a lot of drama around Tarte, their brand trips, they didn't have that many Black people ever representing them. They don't have the shades we need. And they'll take those moments and they're like, okay, insert 2 Black girls here. And it's like, that's not enough for us, because you just found 2 Black girls that you thought would kind of shut us up, but you haven't had 2 Black girls since that one time as kind of like the shut up Black girls. So it's like, it's obvious to see when brands or, just other influencers are doing this to kind of pander in a sense to us. And it's just very hard to see on both sides. So I know a lot of people don't like speaking about this, especially, other Black women within this space, whether they work on my side or influencers, because they feel like, okay, if I talk too much about it, I don't want to be blacklisted either. I don't want brands not reaching out to me because I'm constantly talking about the disparity. I'm constantly talking about how I don't feel like welcomed or paid well or whatever the issue is. So I think that's a whole nother layer as well that stops a lot of people from really digging into this.
And I guess it also links to the typical stereotype of the opinionated Black woman, the aggressive Black woman, the one that's always got something to say. So it's like you want to speak out about an issue, but the fact that you're speaking out is another issue itself.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the hard part of, maybe I am a Black girl with 100,000 followers making $50,000 a month, 20,000, whatever the number is. But I know everyone else around me is making double that. Do I speak up? I'm making more than the average Black girl. I've kind of made it compared to everyone else. Like, what do I do? So I think that's like a hard place for them to be in, but it's definitely something that I wish more people would speak about.
Yeah. And I also wanted to make a point on shadow banning and how someone can actually be, because TikTok has like the For You page, and when you consume someone's content a lot, it will come up even if you don't actually follow them. But people can actually be following someone's page and not see content for months, and it's like that would not typically happen with the white creator. So why is that?
Yeah, and that's interesting because of course I know you remember, the United States didn't have TikTok for a day. When we came back, there was a lot of things missing. And I'm not saying that this is the first time this has happened, but this was the first time I feel like a lot of people caught on to, okay, they're actually messing with these algorithms to fit an agenda. There was basically a lot of content removed that was negative content about our sitting president, things like that. And it's like, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. I think the problem is you only have a handful of people in charge of this algorithm. And even though we're sold, in the United States, free speech, you can say what you want, you feel, you can be as creative as you want. Unfortunately, these platforms do have, an agenda, and it doesn't always have to be political. Instagram, at one point was more so about creativity, and now it kind of just feels like a shop here, buy here, take my course, do X and X. So it's like, I think it just depends on what these platforms are wanting to push at this time. And what that does for creators, unfortunately, it does suppress them. But it's like, what can we do as users? We don't work on the algorithms. We're not in these rooms. Like, what can we do to actually, improve on this? So I've definitely seen it lately, even get worse. But it's kind of like, where do we go from here? What can we do?
Yeah, and I definitely think for algorithms to change or for there to be a decrease and eventually an elimination of the bias, it has to come directly from the platforms themselves. So it has to be work done by Instagram, work done by TikTok. What would you say these brands would have to actually do to get rid of that? Like scrap the algorithm completely or?
So I think, once again, I think it starts with who at the very top, who is writing it, right? If we don't have the representation in those rooms when writing these algorithms, it will never change. Because for us to say, all right, maybe they need to go back into the lab and try again. If we're trying again with the same 15, 20 people who wrote the first algorithm, I don't see where we can now make it more inclusive, make it to where everyone sees everything, just because those 15 or 20 people there, that's not their motive. So I think it really is going to have to start with, how can we get more Black, brown, just other minorities writing these algorithms, or not even just writing, maybe they're the ones that can potentially, ask for changes. When running campaigns, who's there as well? Like, who's advertising for Facebook, who's advertising for Instagram? And these teams still look similar to the writers. So I think until we can stop it from the source, I don't see how they can change the algorithm with no bias. And I kind of spoke about this a little bit on another podcast, talking about how, unfortunately, AI is written still for white people. And I kind of talked about that because I ran a couple of tests where I just didn't give it any information, and I would ask it questions to see what type of answers it would curate based on what they assumed I was. And I did this on like a bunch of different browsers, different laptops, different settings, libraries, all the things, because I'm also into AI a little bit. And it automatically assumed that I was white. So it's like, but that comes from the writers. So the same way that the algorithms within these AI companies like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, Midjourney, all the things, Instagram, TikTok, that it starts with the writers. So I think that's the only way that there will ever be any type of change, if there's change within the teams that are writing these algorithms.
Yeah, like it definitely, I am a believer of change has to come from within. So it needs to come within the companies and from the top.
Of course, I agree.
So with the current disparities, like obviously change is not going to happen right now. What kind of advice or ways of navigating it through now do you suggest?
So there's a lot that you can do. If there's someone out there that's like a Black creator that's just kind of discouraged because of, okay, I know I'm already kind of, going into this without having information. I'm probably going to get paid less. The best measures that you can do, number one, is always negotiate. And the next thing that I really want a lot of people to kind of take advantage of is seek people, or seek knowledge from people that look like you. I had a few clients before that told me, their experience as a Black person or a Black woman working with a talent manager who was also a Black woman versus a talent manager who was white. And there was a huge difference. I think if you're somebody who's wanting to be an influencer or wanting to be in this space or even work in marketing, it starts with networking within our own community, like not gatekeeping these roles, not gatekeeping knowledge. And that's honestly why I even do what I do and what I speak about online, because it is so gate kept. And I don't like it because it's like, here we are, we're still getting paid way less and people don't know any better. So I think the best thing that you can do is seek knowledge for yourself. Don't just assume, and always be negotiating. Always ask questions. Don't feel like you're stepping on toes by trying to negotiate. Don't feel like, oh, like they're going to tell me no if I ask. If we keep doing that, we'll be in the same situation in 10 years. So it's like we kind of have to take control, as much as we can with the circumstances we're given, and, find knowledge for ourselves, find people, there's people like me, other Black women in this space who are already done it, other Black influencers who are where you want to be, and, seek some knowledge from them, and don't be discouraged by, I don't know if I should be asking for this amount. I don't know if I belong in this space, because until we get to, we're going to ask and we're not going to just assume, we're going to be in the same spot. So I think that's the biggest piece I can give to people who want to be in this industry.
Wow. Was there any other additional points you wanted to make? Because I feel like you have so much to say.
Oh yeah, girl. I could be here all day. This is it's the biggest thing that I will say though is I'm looking forward to the day where there are not even just more Black women doing brand deals and influencers, but also working on the brand side. I think that will change a lot of what's kind of going on with partnerships, the disparity, because there has to be checks and balances somewhere. And if there's no Black women in these spaces, how is there any type of like checks and balances if it's just a group of white women or a group of white women and white men? So, but yeah, I just, all I can hope is that in the next 5 years, as this grows, it will become like any other industry that, people, the reason that we have like, unions and all the things now in these other industries, because people stood up, people got fed up, they were like, you know what, you're not going to keep paying me X amount of dollars for X amount of hours, and they actually fought for what they thought they deserved. And until people do that in this industry, it's not going to change. So that's what I hope to see kind of in the next 5 years, so that we can, move the post a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely that would be amazing to see, like that change. It would be so good. Um, but yeah, I think we'll wrap up for now. So thank you for joining us for this episode as we unpack the intricacies of the influencer pay gap, the disparities, and the impacts of algorithmic biases. Thank you so much to Bree for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you found this discussion valuable, then please like and subscribe and definitely share any other thoughts that you have. This has been the Influence Gap. Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys. Bye.